buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, it's for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature right here on the Michael Dukes Show. Broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on Dish, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream, links to our social media sites where we simulcast the radio show every morning on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and all different kinds of stuff out there. You can contact me on the website, et cetera, et cetera. So welcome to the program, and thanks for coming in this morning. It is our favorite day of the week, where we get a chance to talk about our favorite subject, our favorite issue. This is, to me, I'm not a one-issue guy, right? I mean, there's lots of things that I'd like to see fixed or taken care of in the country. But, you know, for me, a cornerstone issue, I guess I would say, that the issue that I think is underrated by some, overblown by others, is the issue of the right to keep and bear arms. Because as we talked about previously, old Chuck Heston saying it's the one rights, it's the one right that allows all the other rights to exist at all. I think the only reason we're still as free a country as we are, is because, that implicit a threat of a populace who would say you can only go this far and no farther, right? I mean, that's what really the Second Amendment was about. Because we've seen plenty of overreach by politicians, and still, even with firearms, they've slowly subsumed a lot of our rights in many, many different areas in many different ways. I mean, they're in every part of our life. We're about to talk to JD Tuccille. I mean, he's talking to people who can't even braid other people's hair, right, without getting permission from the government to do so. How much more do we need to allow them to be, basically inculcated into our lives? It's it's just frustrating to watch, but that's why it's so important for Americans to be able to exercise those rights. And that's why we that's why we spend all that time every Friday going over this and talking about these things and working through this stuff. So today's program, JD Tuccille, Reason Magazine, about to join us. We're going to talk with him about, a recent ruling in Massachusetts. First of all, we'll go through that, which was kind of interesting and exciting. And then we'll also talk, he wrote back last month, I think it was right around my birthday, and we hadn't talked to him since, but he wrote about the Uvalde Report. The Uvalde Report came out about what happened in Uvalde, and that is... it's got some shocking stuff in it. And there's some interesting things that are happening around this new shooting in Georgia as well, which we'll get into, I'm sure, if not with JD, then later. But there's a lot of interesting things happening today, so we want to get started. But before we get too far along here, I see JD has joined us down there in the green room. And before he eats absolutely all of my virtual donuts all by himself, let's get him squared away, shall we, and bring him on the program this morning. JD Tuccille, contributing editor, Reason Magazine. Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. And let me just add, if we have a feedback issue, my headphones aren't working. So let me know and I can reboot if I need to. So,
Okay. No, I think we're doing good so far. We don't have any feedback so far, so we're okay. Thank you for letting me know. Well, JD, it's been a little bit since we talked. This is one of my favorite times, is to sit down and chat with you about a bunch of different stuff, but especially when we both get to talk about firearms, which I think is your not so secret passion on the side kind of thing. So I'm glad that you're able to join us this morning. So let's get started. This was an interesting case. You know, we all know that in Massachusetts, everything is outlawed, right? I mean, there's not a single law those people haven't passed that are seen somebody having fun and they're going, we should outlaw that. They're having too much fun, you know? And most recently, this new case just came out that now utilized the Second Amendment and the Brune decision to overturn a law about knives, switchblades, automatic openers, whatever you want to call them. This is some good news, I think, but obviously there's lots of work to do. Give us the rundown here.
yeah, absolutely. This was a really interesting case because it came out of Massachusetts. I went to college in Massachusetts, and the running joke, and it wasn't a joke, it was true, was that as you entered the state, there was a series of billboards telling you the radar detectors were illegal, firearms were strictly regulated, carried a minimum 1-year sentence, speed limits were strictly enforced by airplanes. It was like, okay, maybe I should just turn around and leave the state right now. So you don't expect any kind of a pro-liberty decision coming out of a Massachusetts court. The Massachusetts Supreme Court looked at Heller, looked at Brune, and looked at one of its own precedents from a few years ago, and it determined that automatic openers, switchblade knives, are in fact bearable arms. They're not dangerous and unusual weapons that would be excluded from protection under the Second Amendment, and therefore state law against the carrying of switchblade knives is unenforceable. It violates the Constitution. It was an extremely well-reasoned decision. It drew on a precedent that the court had issued itself just a few years ago that found that stun guns are also protected by the Second Amendment. And what's so encouraging about this, aside from the fact that it happened in Massachusetts, is that it's recognition that the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. That's weapons, not just firearms, because we get hung up on that a lot of the time. But it's the full category of bearable weapons.
Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. And look, the proliferation. I mean, there's been a couple scares in this country, right? A couple of these riotous, fearful episodes. One was, one of them spawned the 1968 Gun Control Act, and that was this idea that, there's gangs in the streets with Saturday night specials and, all this kind of stuff. And much of it was overblown, much like today's crime. I mean, if you read the news today, or over the last 10 years, crime is worse than ever. Yet crime is actually across the country, with the exception of the COVID spike, is at almost a historic low. Murder is at a historic low. But if you watch the news, you'd think you should be wearing a flak jacket and driving an APC to the grocery store to get some groceries, And the same thing happened with knives. And that even part of that came out of things like West Side Story, where they're talking about the guys all have switchblades and all. But I mean, switchblades really have been kind of going the way of the dodo in the country for years. I mean, now they call them automatic openers. Even just folding knives that they look like a hunting knife, but you push a button and it snaps out because it's good for one. We've discovered it's nice to have one-handed operation on a pocket knife when you need to be doing something, because usually you got your hands full with something else. And so we've seen these across the country, and in most parts of the country, automatic openers, switchblades, whatever you want to call them, they're totally legal. But some places are still trying to hold on to the past, and this is a good example of that.
It's absolutely true. And in fact, the court pointed to the fact that only 7 states and the District of Columbia ban switchblades, automatic openers, as it is right now. And the reason is important because a lot of times in those states, when you have these laws against, traditional automatic openers, the police will stop you and arrest you. And I know this was the case in New York and Massachusetts in several incidents, if they discover that your knife is openable with one hand at all, depending upon the wording of the law. So if you've got an assisted opening knife, if you've got a flipper operated knife, or if just the bearings are loose enough that you can snap it open with one hand, you might be arrested under these old and really archaic and panic fueled from the 1950s West Side Story era, laws against switchblade knives. So if you find out that switchblade knives are actually protected under the Second Amendment, you not only protect the carrying of real automatic openers, you protect flipper operated, you protect assisted opening, you protect knives loose enough just to snap open with your hand. It makes it a lot easier to carry a pocket knife of any sort.
That's crazy. I mean, many years ago, I had a pocket knife that just had a little stud sticking out of the side of the blade. And so you could put your thumb on it and open it with your thumb. It didn't snap out. It wasn't fast. It's just you could hold it in your hand and run the blade. That would have been, I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's when we could see absolutely that government has gone too far when they want to try and regulate everything like that. I mean, it's just madness. It's good that we're moving in the other direction. But still, that's when you hear that kind of, I'd never heard that. That's madness.
Oh, and it's absolutely nuts. And people got jacked up because you walked in, you got your pocket knife, and a cop would say, "Can I see that?" And he'll take it and he tries to flip it open with his hand. You're like, what are you doing? Well, if he's able to flip it open with that one hand, you're done. You're going to jail. And that's if just because you crossed the border into the wrong state. So this really protects a lot more people than it seems to under the terms of the law. And it's also a very nice move away from, say, what's happening in the UK and parts of Europe. The UK is talking about banning points on knives, and you can't carry a locking knife in the UK at all. You can only carry a slip joint. So this is really a nice development.
You can't even carry a pen knife. I mean, they were talking about having chefs register all their professional knives because that obviously is a problem. I mean, if you're a chef and you've got an 8-inch, fillet knife, you've got to register that and get it checked. And don't you dare lose it, or what? I mean, it's just at some point you're like, folks, things have gone too far. Is nobody else seeing that things have gone too far? So it's good news in Massachusetts. But there is an interesting fact that in California, they chose something completely different.
Yes, California is yet another one of those states where, not as many things are as illegal in California, probably as in Massachusetts, although they compete on that point. But a federal district court in California decided that switchblade knives are not protected by the Second Amendment because they are considered dangerous and unusual and not common use bearable arms. Never mind that they're perfectly legal in over 40 states and that they're commonly carried in those states. I mean, I own several. A lot of people do. That the court decided that you can't do that. You sometimes get the impression that a lot of judges spend an awful lot of time cloistered and not living the lives that regular people live. So this decision came down on the exact opposite side from this.
Right.
It'll have to be reconciled at some point, but at least people in Massachusetts, the Bay State, are safe, even if Californians continue to be under the thumb of the law.
Well, we laugh about, dangerous and unusual. And of course, that's a standard that they've been trying to, finagle around the courts for years. It's one of the reasons why AR-15s are actually protected is because they're in common use, right? I mean, 25 million ARs they estimate in the United States. I think that might be a little low, but 25 million ARs. Well, if there's 25 million ARs, I guarantee you there's at least 4 or 5 times that amount of automatic opening knives. I mean, almost everybody's knife these days, every manufacturer, probably 60-70% of them are all automatic openers. And I don't know about you, but I got a drawer full of pocket knives, that which one do I want to carry today, or which one have I been using? I mean, I probably have a dozen automatic opening knives in my drawer. And if I do, probably most other people, have at least a handful of them. I mean, there's got to be 100 million automatic opening knives out there. And you're telling me that it's not in common use and it's dangerous and unusual? It's a pocket knife. It's only 4 inches long. How are you going to, it's mind blowing. And people just go, judge must be right. It's insane.
Well, yeah, the judge probably saw too many, movies from the 50s about gangsters popping open the old Italian style stiletto, which is a cool looking knife, but a little fragile to my taste. But I mean, I'm sure that's what the judge is thinking of. He's thinking of an old 50s gangster movie, and it's just ridiculous. These aren't comedies. They're very definitely everyday knives, especially when you think about add the category of assisted openers to it. These are knives that people use all the time. They're legal in the majority of states. By definition, they're in common use. And obviously, they're bearable. And if they're in common use, they're not unusual. And they're no more dangerous than any other knife, which is another point. The Massachusetts court specifically said the most comparable, comparison, a historical comparison for switchblade knives is the simple folding knife, which has been in use for as long as folding knives could be made. And they said that there's really nothing that makes a switchblade knife in its usage different than any other folding knife. So that's what they compared it to and said folding knives of all sorts are an obvious common use. So the fact that the California court coming to a different decision is just bizarre.
I think we should just all go back to daggers, right? Then you don't have to worry about it opening. You just put it on your belt, and is that what you're worried about? It gets out faster than, well, okay, we'll just carry a dagger then. That'll be fine. I mean, I'll cut this box open with this dagger. I mean, it's madness. We'll get more into this as we continue. JD Tuccille is our guest. It is Firearms Friday. We're happy to be here. Happy to have JD here. He's down in Arizona enjoying a little bright sunshine. I'm a little jealous. I mean, it's only 48 degrees here, but no big deal. All right, we're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio with Firearms Friday.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're with JD Tuccille here, a recent magazine. I mean, yeah, I was just thinking about it. I actually have I was cleaning out one of my drawers the other day, and I was like, oh, I forgot I had it. And I actually got one of those little clear plastic shoebox size boxes, and I wrote knives on the end, and I put them all in there and and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of I mean, I could start my own knife store, just in that one alone. But I've carried a pocket knife since I was, I don't know, 10 years old, something like that, and yeah, they started out as folders, but as you go on more and more, you realize how nice it is to be able to, I got a box in my hand, I need to cut it or whatever, and you just snip it out, do what you need to do, you pull it back in and away you go. I don't understand the hysteria around this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people out there who I guess just don't know.
Oh, it's nuts. I mean, some of my earliest memories, I remember every field trip we took when I was in grammar school, we go to a place, we'd go to these, natural sites or any place of note. And the standard thing then was at the end of the trip, we all got to go to the gift shop, whatever the souvenir shop was. And the boys all lined up for whatever pocket knife they sold had engraved the name of the place we were at. We'd all have to buy a pocket knife from that place. We all ended up carrying that around as our next, favorite. We didn't use the term EDC at the time, but our everyday carry pocket knife, because we always had a knife on us. And that was not weird. Our teacher stood there making sure that no one pushed and cut into line, but we all bought a pocket knife and then took it back on the bus back to school.
Yeah, and that would be unheard. I would be shocking today, right? I remember when my kids were, I think my youngest was probably 6 or 7. I made a bulk order to Case Knives. Remember Case Knives?
Yeah.
The classic folder, right? Well, I had an in with one of the guys, and I called the distributor and I said, I bought, I think 20 or 30 knives. And every year for the next 5 years, I gave every one of the kids a new knife. And some of them were cool with these jewel toned scales on them and everything, and it was just something that every kid, everybody should carry a pocket knife. It's just, in fact, what killed me was, if you go back to the best dressed gentleman or, the whatever it is, the gentleman's companion, every gentleman carries a penknife, right? I mean, just a little knife, a little with a full, because it is handy to have something to cut. I mean, this is what kills me. Of course, we're always talking about firearms, but I got to tell you, a pocket knife has got more uses. I mean, how many times a day do you use it? I'm thinking yesterday, I think I used it 3 times, just off the top of my head, thinking back to using my pocket knife yesterday, probably 3 times yesterday, I used my pocket knife. That's just crazy that they would try and outlaw something like that. But it comes back to that kind of hysteria.
It is hysteria. I mean, every now and then I'll tune in, and we would talk about the UK before, but there's a couple of YouTube channels I follow who are UK weapons specialists. What kind of pen knives are you allowed to carry? What are you allowed to use for self-defense? And it's all, I mean, it's just amazing. what the hoops they have to jump through just to carry the most useful basic tool that hominids invented. I mean, what, hundreds of thousands of years ago when they started carrying on sharp pieces of flint. I mean, that's the tool. Yeah, the knife is the most basic tool you can have, and you should have it on you all the time. And yeah, you mentioned a gentleman's knife. I actually have a beautiful wood-scaled pocket knife I put in my pocket when my wife go out to dinner because it's my nice knife, and I need to have my nice knife with me.
Right, gotta have. I'm dressed up. I should have the dressy knife, right? That's what it all comes down to. Yeah, I just think that it is amazing that more people aren't kind of paying attention to this. And quite honestly, JD, I'll be honest with you, I thought kind of the whole debate over the self opener or the automatic or the switchblade or whatever you assisted opener, I thought that debate was kind of over because again, they've become ubiquitous. I mean, they're the most prolific knives out there right now. I thought this was really not even a thing. But when I read your article, I was like, he got arrested for having an automatic. I mean, that's crazy for sure. So we obviously have a little bit more work to do on this. Let's get back into it. We'll finish up with this story, and then we'll move on to Uvalde. JD Tuccille, contributing editor, Reason Magazine, our guest today. It's good to see him. I'm glad. I hope your summer was great, JD.
Oh yeah,
it always goes so fast. It always goes so, just like this radio show. It goes really fast. All right, let's get back to it. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. No matter where you are, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, you can like it and you can share it from there. Let's do this.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
You know, if we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
That's right. No murder guns here, always protection. I make sure to check the tag before I buy it because, nobody wants to buy those murder guns. JD Tuccille, contributing editor, Reason Magazine, our guest as we continue on here, finishing up with his story in Massachusetts. Where does this go from here, JD? I mean, like you said, this is some good word from Massachusetts. Obviously, the California case, flies in the face of this. But where does this all go from here? And does it end up at the Supreme Court, or do the cases align? What happens here?
Well, because this was the Massachusetts Supreme Court, the conflicting decision is from a U.S. District Court in California. They're not actually on the same appeal track. So the highest court on the Massachusetts law has already spoken. That's the Massachusetts Supreme Court. That does not go to a federal court. There's no federal appeal on that. So the California District Court case will be appealed. Knife Rights and the American Knife and Tool Institute, at least Knife Rights is involved in that and has already said they'll appeal that decision. So it won't conflict with the Massachusetts decision, but it will be challenged and will climb up to the appeals level at least. And it should. I mean, it's a Second Amendment case, and as pointed out in the Massachusetts decision, the Second Amendment covers arms. It covers knives, it covers firearms, it covers stun guns, as the Massachusetts Supreme Court has already said. It covers pepper spray. It covers, it can cover anything that is a bearable arm that you might use to defend yourself. And that's a wide range of things. It's also the wide range of things that the law might be applied to that you wouldn't think. We mentioned automatic weapons, automatic knives, the laws against automatic knives being applied against knives that are just easy to open with one hand in a lot of states. That snagged a lot of people. So when you protect an automatic knife, you protect people with just easily opened folding knives. So when the Second Amendment is widely applied, it protects people who did not think they were covered by restrictive laws to begin with, but were if the cop is in a bad mood that day. So where we go from here now is a good precedent in Massachusetts that protects the people of Massachusetts, and hopefully an appeal that will win similar freedoms for the people of California and the Ninth District beyond the Ninth Appeals Court District beyond that. Mm-hmm.
Well, we can always hope. I mean, we know California, of course, has got the Ninth Circus there, and we're
Yeah.
not never confident that that's going to come out okay. But that's it's interesting to say the least. You wrote a great piece back on my birthday. Thank you. That was a great birthday present. I appreciate it. I read it that morning. In fact, I got up and had some coffee. I was actually on vacation. It was a Firearms Friday, but we were off. I was on vacation in one of my favorite places, and I was sipping my coffee, reading your article, just shaking my head because the report that came out about the shooting in Uvalde just highlights. I mean, calling it a parade of errors is kind. I mean, this is just a train wreck of apathy and cowardice, I think is what I would say. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this. But walk us through this report that came out and some of the things that were documented and highlighted in this report about what happened in Uvalde.
Yeah, I mean, what I did is I riffed off of of basically a Freedom of Information suit that the Wall Street Journal and a number of other publications had filed against the police in Uvalde. And what they did is they got the police records, the 911 calls, the footage, and it just documented how little the police did to respond to an ongoing situation and how long they just kind of sat around diddling and waiting for something to happen. It was incredible, the delays there. And what that did is it reminded me to go back and check out the Texas legislature report on this, which is absolutely damning, because what the Wall Street Journal found illustrates the failures that the Texas legislature had documented with no one taking charge. They didn't set up a command center. The police chief who was supposed to take charge, because they had a plan for this. They actually had a written plan what to do if there was a school shooting in Uvalde, and they didn't follow it. The police chief didn't step up and set up the command center. Everyone was waiting for somebody else to give an order. And literally hundreds of police officers sat around listening to kids being killed in that school, one after another, waiting for somebody else to say, go ahead and do something. They were timid. And when you look at the language that's in the Texas legislature report, they talked about the timidity. And the word they use is timid, and that police were too concerned about their own safety and not enough concerned about the safety of the children who were at risk in that school, being murdered one by one, along with the teachers, to actually step up and do anything. There were a couple of cops who went in, started initially to go in, and ultimately it was one SWAT team. And I didn't mention this in my article. It was a Border Patrol SWAT team that said, we're not going to wait for orders anymore because
right,
yeah.
And
they just went around the corner and charged down the hall and ended the situation.
Yeah. But
it could have continued unless those cops had said, you know what, we're not waiting for orders. We're just going to do this.
Yeah, no, and you say, and I'm going to take issue because you kind of glossed over it. Well, there were hundreds of, there were 376 law enforcement officers who stood around for one guy with a gun in the school. 376 officers stood around for an hour. I'm just like, what the?
For an hour.
What? I mean, these and probably the majority of them are battle rattle. They got vests on. They got everything else. They're equipped and armed just as well as the shooter. 376 of them stood around saying, "Oh, I couldn't possibly go." You get paid to do that. That's what you're supposed to do. And congratulations to the Border Patrol team who, and I had read that earlier, that they had basically disregarded orders. They were just like, no, we're going to go in. We're not going to do this. And this 5-6 man team went in and they took care of business, as it should have been an hour before. I mean, I don't know how many kids were shot in that 1 hour, but I mean, if they only saved one more, it would have been worth it, And this is the thing. We keep getting told, oh no, you don't need a gun. You can depend on the police. Oh, you don't need a gun. They'll protect you. Oh, we don't. And yet, and the worst part was, tell us about what was happening with the parents who came on site.
Parents showed up on site, and actually, a lot of them were armed themselves. They heard that their kids were under assault at the school, were being murdered at the school. Some of them had received phone calls from within the school, from teachers, and they're calling their husbands outside, the families outside, and saying, "Please, do something." They showed up. Some of them were armed. They wanted to go in themselves. And honestly, if 376 cops are too afraid to go into the school, haven't even set up a command post, Why wouldn't you let somebody who is willing to step up go in and do it? Instead, the cops actually tased them, wrestled them to the ground, and arrested them. The police spent more time actually arresting the parents outside than they did going in to do something about the one guy inside who was committing murder during this hour period.
To me, that is just the ultimate right there. I mean, that they actually tased and subdued the parents who were like, "You won't do your job, we'll go do it for you. These are our kids, we'll take care of it." I mean, I know people lost their job over this, but quite honestly, I think some people should have been prosecuted over this. I mean, I think there should be like full on, you stopped a parent from the lawful exercise of protecting their kids, you're going to jail. I mean, that this is just, and we've seen this timing, right? Remember Parkland? Remember the school resource officer stood outside while he was inside shooting up because he didn't want to, and this is, I'm not saying that every police officer is like this. I'm just saying we can't depend on other people. This is another reason why we need to be in control of our own destiny and taking care of this stuff.
Absolutely right. And I will point out that the local police chief and one other officer were charged in June with basically child abandonment. Just total. I mean, it's total dereliction of duty resulted in child abandonment. That's the harder charge, so that's what they're getting slapped with, and that's extremely rare. That almost never happens. But this was such an abject failure to perform that in Texas at least they're willing to prosecute these officers for that. But yeah, I mean, 376. By the way, these are multiple agencies too. This is a failure, not just of the Uvalde school police force, the town police, other police forces. The only one that stepped up, as you mentioned, was that one SWAT team from Border Patrol that just looked around, saw chaos, which was, by the way, another word used in the Texas State Legislature report, chaos. There was nobody in command, no one willing to step up and say, I'm in charge of the show. And they just kind of stood around looking at each other until somebody finally said, we're just going to do it. And they're the ones who went in there, kicked open the door, and ended that siege. You
got to wonder why. I mean, is it because of this? You got to wonder why nobody wanted to take charge. Were they afraid of being? Chastised? Were they afraid of succeeding or fail? I mean, to me, I can't understand that. A job needs to be done. People are in danger. You go do it. You let the chips fall where they may. That's one of those things that I was told when I was very young. Do what you need to do, and if you have to pay a price later, you did the right thing anyway. You know what I mean? And so that idea to me of nobody wants to take charge because nobody wants to be responsible because nobody wants to be held liable or accountable or in the public eye or whatever. Hey, you failed already because by doing nothing, guess what? You failed.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've destroyed faith in the police in Texas and across the country for good reason. I mean, we look at this, we see, the idea that we're supposed to wait for the police to respond is ludicrous. What happens if they respond and sit around? Because, as the Texas Legislature report pretty openly called them, of cowardice. May have bureaucratic dithering or fear of legal liability, but ultimately the Texas Legislature said they were too afraid of too afraid for their own skins and not concerned enough about the safety of the children, which is the reverse of the role they're supposed to take on when they apply for the job of being a police officer.
Right.
If you don't want to take on that responsibility, you don't have to take the job. There's no draft for it.
Yeah, when you sign up, you know that you could be putting your life on the line to protect other people. That's to protect and serve, right? That's what we always hear, to protect and serve. And this is not unusual that we're told to depend on the police. We're told to but we see it time and time again where there has been failures, and like you said, it's causing us to start to distrust what's going on. I mean, we saw it there. We saw it in Parkland. The guy at the Parkland shooter had something like 15 contacts with the FBI and almost 20 contacts with local law enforcement before he went to the school and shot it up. Same thing happened with the Pulse nightclub shooter. He had contact before. And now, of course, we'll talk about this in just a second. Yep. But this Georgia shooter, they had contact with him just last year. And yet today, we're facing this other tragedy, and there's other factors to this as well. And as a father of a gun owner, I want to get your take on this as well as we continue. JD Tuccille is our guest, Reason Magazine. We're talking we just finished talking up about Uvalde We're going to discuss the Georgia case here in just a second. There are some things in there, and you might be surprised at how I feel about some of this stuff, because there is some things coming to light here that just kind of rock my world, and we're going to continue with that here in just a second with JD Tuccille, contributing editor, Reason Magazine, on this Firearms Friday. Back with more after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. JD Tuccille is our guest. I want to just get some more takes from JD on this Uvalde thing real quick. I apologize, JD. I got to go into the chat room here. Henry, if you can't read the room and you can't read what's going on, and you understand that you're just spouting off a bunch of stuff that nobody's paying attention to, is because nobody cares what you're saying. So if you can't stop, you're going to get the ban hammer. Okay, so either read what's going on in the room, contribute, creatively, or I'm going to boot you to the curb. And because this is, you're getting ugly about it, and I don't want to hear it. So there you go. Anyway, JD, was there any big surprises to you on this report from Uvalde? Was there anything that just that made your eyebrows climb into your hairline? And you and I both have a similar hairline, so
yes, we do.
we know it's way up there. I mean, is there anything that that you hadn't seen before that was just kind of left you aghast?
Well, I mean, what it was, it's the scope of it. I mean, we know in the past, we know that courts have passed down decisions saying that there's no duty on the part of the police to protect individual citizens, that it's only a general duty to the public. So that if they fail us as individuals, they fail to protect specific people, even if they're aware of the danger to that person, they're not liable. What we saw in this case was a complete and total multi-agency failure by hundreds, 376 police officers who failed to take control of a situation, failed to respond to a single assailant who was attacking a school full of children. So it was a systemic implementation of that court decision, saying that police have no specific duty to protect us as individuals, just a general duty. They didn't step up. They showed up at the scene and actually prevented the parents from going in there, protecting their own children in a situation where the police were unwilling to intervene. So the police not only didn't intervene, they prevented others from intervening. It was kind of the distilled essence of what's wrong with relying upon the state to protect us and giving up our own ability and our own right to protect ourselves and our loved ones.
Yeah, I mean, that was the shocking thing, because there was actually some video of them taking down parents on the sidewalk who were going to go in. There's actually some video of them roughing around and handcuffing and putting on the ground parents who were like, we're going to go in if you're not. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people because they could see themselves in that moment, and the incredulity of police actually preventing you from doing something that they weren't willing to do. And in Texas, I guarantee you, they're willing to go armed and go take care of business. You know what I mean? It'd be like Alaska. We don't have to wait around for a troop. Up here, I make a phone call. If I called right now from where I'm sitting and said, I need police at my house right now, it would be 30 minutes before anybody showed up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably not as rural as you, but I'm pretty far from the nearest county sheriff's substation. And we have a long wait for the cops to show up at our house too. I will say Uvalde has entered the general culture. My wife and I took a CCW class recently. Arizona has constitutional carry, but we decided for the reciprocity mostly that it would be nice to have a CCW. And so we are in there, and Uvalde was invoked several times during the course of the class as a reason for people to be sitting in there, taking responsibility for the safety of themselves and their families. The failure of the police is recognized and has entered the general culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that was a wake up call for a lot of people when they saw how that was handled, because it's becoming, as we talked about earlier, it's not just this. It was Parkland. It's other school shootings. The only one that we can that we can point to where it was really good was it Pearlman? I think it was Pearlman in Tennessee, where a shooter was in the school and the principal went out to his car and retrieved his own gun and came back in and stopped it. And I mean, that's what we expect, right? That's what we expect, is somebody to step up. If we're not there, I would expect somebody else to step up to protect children. Our most important thing, our most important resource, our most important thing, the most precious things in the world. And you would expect to stand up and do that. That just seems, I mean, it's not like I'm saying it's manly. I'm saying it's human. You're always protecting the children, the innocent. That seems to be human nature.
That's a fundamental duty. And I think it's the ultimate test, is that if you're not willing to protect the most vulnerable, the kids who really are incapable of protecting themselves in most cases, then the system has failed. You failed as a protector. I mean, the badge and the gun mean nothing then. You're now probably an impediment to public safety rather than a guarantor of it. And you need to get out of the way then when someone who's willing to do the job steps up and offers to do it themselves.
Yeah.
That was with the parents in Uvalde.
I got to tell you, I've been watching my wife watches a lot of documentaries about crime and things, court cases and things like that. And over the last couple of years, I've really started my distrust for the police have increased dramatically, because the cases go back and back and you see how things are manipulated, evidence is planted, lies, people make decisions and don't follow the evidence trail. And then you see something like this and you're like, they're just humans. And in most cases, they're just as human as anybody else, sometimes more so, meaning they're not doing the right thing, which is frustrating to see. But all right, JD Tuccille, our guest, the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
What the hell is an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Man, those penguins are dangerous. I mean, assault penguin. Problem is you can't really carry them on your hip. They get a little upset when you put them under the coat. So you just got to do what you got to do. JD Tuccille, Reason Magazine, is our guest. It is Firearms Friday. We've talked a little bit about Massachusetts and now Uvalde. I want to talk about this Georgia case for a second, but any final thoughts on the Uvalde report and lessons learned on this, JD, before we move on to the final topic here?
Yeah, we have to rely on ourselves. There are good cops out there, but you don't know whether the good cops or the Uvalde-style cops are the ones that are going to show up, whether they're going to take control of the situation, whether they're going to protect you and your loved ones. That's something that we have to guarantee for ourselves. It's nice then if the police help us, but it's not something we can rely on them for.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is, of course, is that police are always telling us about how they're afraid that they're never going to make it home that night, that even in cases where we're trying to help ourselves, we, in some cases, have ended up being either the victim or the criminal in the long run, because we're trying to protect ourselves because we're just unsure as to whether or not they're going to do the job. And that's sad, but that's kind of where we are. But again, I'm willing to do what's right and pay the price later if we have to. It's just, it is what it is. Let's talk for a second about this Georgia case. It has just come out that in this Georgia case, where the student, 14 years old, went to the school, shot 4 students, killed 4 students, and wounded others. But now it's come out that Georgia has now charged the father with second-degree murder. And at one point, I'd be like, well, wait a second. You can't. But as you get deeper into this, you realize that there's a deeper problem here. We saw the case in, is it Ohio, where the parents were charged as accomplices to the student because they provided him with a gun. Well, remember, this kid in Georgia was contacted by the FBI last year, at the end of last year or middle of last year, because he'd made some threats to shoot up the school. FBI investigated. Then they contacted local law enforcement. Local law enforcement investigated. They interviewed the father. The father said, well, I only have a couple hunting rifles and he doesn't have access to them. Well, it turns out with all this going on, with all those red flags, that the father bought the 14-year-old boy an AR-15 for Christmas. And apparently the people who are coming out about this and kind of laid all this out are the family of the killer. The family on the mother's side seem to now have been going public about how the boy was severely troubled. He literally was crying out for help. This is not like it was euphemism. He was asking to get mental help. And instead of getting him mental help, they bought him a gun. And in this case, it might be surprising to some of you, but I fully support prosecuting and charging the father with as an accomplice on this, because he has enabled this. You get, if your kids need help, again, going back to what we talked about a minute ago, the most innocent. If you're not there to protect the most innocent among you, then what are you doing? If your kid is crying out for help, you get them the help that they need. This is madness.
Yeah, there was a serious. I want to know more yet, because I'm generally opposed to charging people for crimes they themselves didn't commit. But in this case, yeah, he had a 14-year-old son who was very troubled. One aunt in particular has been very vocal about having tried to intervene herself, having been rebuffed, having tried to contact the authorities, trying to bring in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is their state police. And she's been very vocal that this was an ongoing situation, and the parents knew about it. The parents were abusive, according to her anyway, but at least neglectful and not responsible, and recognizing this kid was extremely troubled. The other issue, and the one you mentioned also, is that the FBI had referred this kid to local authorities and said, this kid is issuing threats. You ought to look into it. The local police apparently opened and closed an investigation very quickly. I would think that in the era in which these threats often, not often, obviously there's a lot that are not carried out, but you take it seriously. I think that the FBI did not drop the ball in this case. They often do in the past, but the local police obviously dropped the ball. So you've got a father who armed a troubled kid instead of giving him the mental health he needed. And you've got local police who are told about specific threats against the school, which the kid later carried out, but who didn't take it seriously in their investigation.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of questions here. And I, like you, am very reticent to charge people for crimes that they didn't personally commit. But this is kind of akin to the getaway driver at the bank job where they kill somebody and they charge the getaway driver with the same murder that the guy who pulled the trigger is, because it's all part of a conspiracy. It's kind of, that's one of the commentators that wrote on this kind of mentioned that. And I thought, well, that does make sense. The fact is like you said, the FBI did do their job, it appears, this time, where they haven't in the past. Local law enforcement, it seemed to close it pretty quick. And what precautions did the school take? The school obviously is very aware that this is what was going on. Were they keeping an extra eye on this kid? Were they, there's a lot of questions here. And again, not to blame the shooters, to blame, but if there is other things that could have been done, we're supposed to learn lessons from this, and that's not it. And I'll be honest, I watched, my wife is a court TV junkie. I'll put it out there. She loves to watch court TV. And I watched several hours over the course of a few weeks of this court case. I think it was in Ohio, where the two parents had the kid that they'd provided the gun that the kid used to shoot the kids in the schools. And it was heartbreaking to watch the testimony. It was heartbreaking to watch how these parents were not parents. They were so wrapped up in themselves and their own lives and their own narcissism that the kid was obviously crying out for help. He obviously was trying to get, and it was heartbreaking to see in black and white what was happening with this. And if this turns out to be the same way in this Georgia shooting, I just don't know. Will that stop other parents, JD? Do you think, if they will think for a second that maybe we should listen to what this kid's saying, or at least not give him a gun, right?
Well, I think this is comparable to the Uvalde situation, with those two officers finally being charged for basically endangering children by abandoning child abandonment. It's rare to charge police officers for not living up to the responsibility. And it's rare to charge parents in a situation like this for not living up to the responsibility, but it may set a baseline expectation that there's some kind of parenting, at least, that you're supposed to engage in, that if your child is mentally ill, seek out help, or if you're not going to seek out help, don't at least render the kid more dangerous. Do something. I think there is a minimum level of responsibility, a baseline being established by this. I'm still trying to decide whether I'm comfortable with charging the father, but I do think that whether or not legal charges are justified, the father did not live up to the minimum responsibilities of a parent, in this case with a troubled child. Something is required more than simply ignoring the situation.
Frank says in the chat room, should parents also be prosecuted when their child commits battery assault on a teacher when the child was crying out for help? No, I mean, I think we've got a difference here is that it's the escalator, Frank. It's not, I think that, children, need to be held accountable for what they do. But in this case, he escalated it by buying the kid a gun, knowing that the kid had been investigated, knowing that they had said they were concerned. And he said, no, I've only got hunting guns, and that the kid was crying out. Again, there's still a lot more information to come out here. But I am like, there's got to be something to warn parents who are not really being parents to say, you're going to be held accountable at a certain level. Beating somebody up, that's one thing. Killing people, multiple people, and giving them the tools to do that is the problem, in my opinion here, as far as that goes.
Yeah, the comparable situation might be if the parent then had bought the kid a pair of brass knuckles after he threatened to hit the teacher. So
yeah, exactly. Bought him a baton and allowed him to beat the teacher senseless or something. I mean, it to me, it's the culpability of enabling. That's what gets me in that regard. All right, final thoughts for you this morning, JD Tuccille, Reason Magazine, on this, or if you want to tease anything else you got going on, what else you're working on. We always love to get a little sneak peek behind the scenes. We feel special when we know about a story before it drops. So whatever else you got going on, hit us with it.
I've been writing. So I'll segue a little bit and say I've been writing a lot about our political culture and about the growing illiberalism of our political culture. And this week I've got a piece out for Reason about how, as authoritarian as the Republican Party has turned, the Democrats actually leapfrogged it to a kind of a soft totalitarianism, where they're using behind-the-scenes pressure as well as threats of action by Europe on companies, and also to arrest individuals to travel to Europe, in order to enforce speech controls that are not permissible under U.S. law, which could be enforced by countries that have more repressive legal regimes. That kind of a soft totalitarianism, that illiberalism, is something I think we're going to see growing in the future, because the political class in this country does not believe in limited government anymore, doesn't believe in the foundation of the country, and that endangers our liberties here when they're actively seeking to undermine the protections for it.
No, I would totally agree with this, that they have leapt into this kind of leapt into this soft totalitarianism. They're not even hiding the fact anymore that they want to come in here and just kind of take over, whether it's manhandling social media and free speech, whether there was a video that came out, Kamala Harris basically saying, if there's technology that we want, I don't care if it's patented, we'll just take it. And then people like Donald Trump saying sometimes you need a strong man, right? I mean, he's angling kind of towards this authoritarianism. And I know that people on the left and the right are loving their candidates, but you've got to look at what the candidates are actually saying. I mean, come on, that's kind of madness when you get to that. But we'll have you back on a non-firearms Friday to talk about that. JD Tuccille, our guest, Reason Magazine. Folks, we're up against the top of the hour. We'll be back with more in hour 2, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Yeah, I haven't finished this article that you just wrote, JD, talking about this, the voters yearning for a dictator being a danger to the country. But you're right. You've got some great insight into this, because it's kind of spooky. Didn't you? I know Emma Camp wrote an article. Didn't you also write an article recently that was looking at some of the polling on the campuses where they were yearning for less free speech? And I mean, all this kind of crazy. It just seems like there's this move in this country where we're kind of embracing this kind of totalitarian idea of, you tell us what to do, Uncle Sugar, we'll do whatever, you take care of us and we'll do what you say. And you're right, we're slipping down that road.
Yeah, I think we're moving into a post-liberal period. Liberal in this sense, meaning the kind of Enlightenment foundation ideas of limited government, individual liberty, free markets, civil society. We're moving into a post-liberal period culturally. And if the cultural foundations for a free society aren't there, the Constitution by itself isn't going to keep it in place. People have to believe in it in order for it to have any life and breath in it. And if we're actually seeing the disappearance of that liberal culture, I think we're in for a real rough ride in the years to come.
No, I agree. And we should normally we don't deal. I mean, well, I guess with the exception of Firearms Friday, that's the only time we really deal with national issues on this show because we're really more state and local focused.
Yeah.
But I think it would be good to have you back to talk about this in depth because this is so pivotal to what we've got going on and what I'm seeing out there to a lot of my listeners and friends and conservative friends is this almost gleeful abandon to try and, to promote somebody like Trump, who he's got some good points. Don't get me wrong. I'd much rather have him than Kamala for sure. But he's got authoritarian tendencies. Nobody can say he doesn't. He's got egotistical, egalitarian kind of I'm the guy, kind of like king-like tendencies. You can't deny that. And that's a danger here in the country. I think more dangerous than almost anything else we're dealing with right now.
No, I agree. I absolutely do. And I don't think we have good choices this year, just less bad ones.
Yeah, exactly. That was my old producer used to say, "Would you like the poop sandwich or the diarrhea milkshake?" And I'm like, "Is there a third choice here? Because I really am not excited about either one of those, right? Neither one of those sounds good to me." All right. Well, JD, as always, my friend, thank you so much for coming on board. Thanks for the late notice. I appreciate it. And you keep on keeping on, my friend. You're doing the Lord's work out there. So
same to you. And thanks for having me. You take care.
Always good to talk with you. Thanks so much. JD Tuccille, Reason Magazine, here on the Michael Duke Show. Wow. Yeah. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of spooky when you come down to it and you see what is going on in people's minds on this kind of stuff and the things that they're saying. So let me drop some links here in the chat room to begin with. For JD's articles. Here's his article on Uvalde, if you want to read it for yourself. Here is his article on the Massachusetts Switchblade case. And then here is his latest article on the soft dictatorship that he's talking about in the comment. And I haven't finished this article yet. I started it this morning, but I got way late on something else. And you can go out there and take a look at that. I'm posting that up. Let me post this up in Rumble as well, so folks can see that as well here. Right there, Switchblade. Okay, and finally, one of these days they're going to integrate all the stuff at once on Rumble and everything else, so I don't have to do it in both places. All right, there we go. It is good stuff. All right, so you got all kinds of stuff there, right there. I'm scrolling backwards here. Didn't New York suggest the Constitution was dangerous? Probably. That sounds like something very New York for them to say. Scrolling backwards here. Willie says lots of GCI problems being reported this morning. Oof. Scrolling back here. Greg says yes, it's a serious lack of parenting. Teresa says back the blue as most of them are good and need our support. I support. I mean, I hate the term back the blue. I hate that kind of concept simply because to me it feels like it's kind of an over, like we support them no matter what. I believe in law enforcement. I think it's an important part. I'm hopeful that a lot of the officers out there are good, but again, I've seen too much history and know too much, and have watched too many of these different criminal cases and court battles and everything else to think that everything that they do is magic and right. It's just not what happens. Way too many instances of that. And if you ever want to go get a real peek at what goes on with law enforcement across the country, you go to YouTube and watch Audit the Audit. And it will show you really quick what happens out there, and that not all law enforcement are great people. That there's a lot of egotism out there in those interactions. I'm not saying, again, all police are bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are good and bad just like everywhere else. They're good or bad just like anywhere else. And in some cases, bad, right? Bad. So it is what it is. Back what is correct, not what is fallible, says Fat Ray. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. Do I support the idea of police? Yes. Do I support them blindly? Absolutely, positively not. Because again, they're human like any other, and like any other group of people. And the bad ones need to be weeded out, and that's what needs to happen. All right. We're coming up on it. Here we go. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do this thing.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Duke Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Duke Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, it's for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature right here on the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet on our audio-only live stream. You can find the stream every day at michaeldukesshow.com. If you want to go over there and be part of it, you can check it out over there. Go ahead and, see that. We also got links up over there to our social media sites. Every day we simulcast the show on Facebook and on YouTube and on Rumble. That's the newest platform is the Rumble platform, which seems to be okay. It seems to be doing okay. I'm cautiously optimistic that it's going to do well for us, and that I'm only on Rumble just as a backup, just in case the Facebook or YouTube decide to kick me to the curb because I say something that offends somebody's sensibilities. I imagine that's going to happen eventually. Somebody will be offended and they'll slap me down over this. But that's why we're on Rumble. And of course, you can always go back and listen to the podcast, which we upload every day, Monday through Friday. And you can find them wherever you find podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, CastBox, Stitcher, and of course, Spotify, where I get most of my podcasts off Spotify because it's easy. I like it. I like that. All right, hour 2 of Firearms Friday. We just finished up with JD Tuccille from Reason Magazine. He came on board to talk with us about Uvalde and what's going on in Massachusetts, and we just finished up talking a little bit about about this Georgia case, which we can get into here in just a moment. We got 2 segments here where we're going to be talking with you about some of the headlines and firearm stories from around the country. I was working on getting Dr. John Lott on the program, but I think that's going to be next week. We're going to talk a little bit about some of his latest work. He's got a piece over in the Federalist that talks about the CDC and what the CDC is doing to kind of well, I guess I hate to say misinformation, but misinformation or basically lying through omission maybe is something that we could point out. We'll talk about that. But I've also opened up the phone lines if you would like to sound off and have your voice be heard on this Firearms Friday, we'd love to hear from you. Just give us a call right now. Phone lines are now open at 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. Feel free to ring us up if you've got some thoughts here on this Firearms Friday on any of the topics that we've hit on. We were just talking about trust in the police here a minute ago during the commercial break with the listeners and everything else. And I think that's a valid that's a valid discussion that we could have one day about trust, but not too much, right? Trust but verify, however you want to call it. We could talk about that as well, or any other topic that's firearms related that you may want to jump in on. And we're going to get to that here in just a second. I see it looks like Fred is calling in from Rhode Island. So we'll touch base with Fred here in just a second. Some of the other stories that I want to get to, again, I want to talk a little bit more about this father of this student in Georgia who shot all these other students. And again, the Dr. John Lott article over at the Federalist, and some crazy stuff that went on in this. We'll talk about that here in a second. But first and foremost, let's go over to Fred, who is in Rhode Island, and we'll get his take on everything that's going on in his mind here this morning. Let's get started. Good morning, Fred. How are you?
Morning, Mike. This whole thing with the Georgia situation, it's a lot of commonalities here. There are an awful lot of commonalities. I'm going to take it all the way back to Sandy Hook in Connecticut with the school shooting there. The mother has strange ideas about her emotionally disturbed kid. The kid had Hirschberg's, I believe. He's diagnosed with that, and she got him interested in guns. All right. She promoted the whole thing as to whether the kid wanted to get involved with it, do something with it, and she facilitated it, and or the other way around. I think she was trying to find something for the kid to do. Thought it was going to be a great idea to keep the kid occupied. As it turned out, it was a horror show. The way it turned out. The situation down there in Georgia. There's a lot of similarities there. The parents facilitated the kid with the gun, with the weapon, and the kid goes out and commits the crime. They should be held. I totally agree with you. They should be held 110% responsible for the actions as if they did it themselves. I completely agree with you there. The situation in Uvalde, though, that's a little bit different. This kid in Uvalde that committed these crimes, he did not really have the resources. To my understanding, he did not really have the resources to go out and purchase the weapons without some type of help, without some type of assistance. I don't see how he could come up with expensive ARs and the equipment, the body armor, this, that, the other thing, all the other stuff he had. You're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. This kid worked at like Wendy's or something, some kind of a minimum wage job. And his parents really didn't have anything to do with it, to my understanding. I never heard anything otherwise, but the parents were not really, involved with facilitating anything to the kid.
Right.
So where did it come from? So, and then you take it back to the political side of this. What has Biden been? What has Biden been doing? What has Clinton been doing? What has Obama been doing? They said, gun control. And what's the best way to facilitate gun control? Make the gun look really, really bad. And what do we have? Ban so-called assault weapons. Add it all up. Connect the dots.
Right.
Tell me that this is something going on then. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But you know what? At this point in time, I think there's a connection there.
Right. Well, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Fred. I think your assertion, I did have some questions about the Uvalde shooter because from what I understand, the weapon that was used was a Daniel Defense AR-15, which, as you point out, is not a $500 rifle. It was,
I think the cheapest one out there is like $2,500.
Yeah.
That's the start. That's the basic model.
Yeah, and he had and according to KXAN in Austin, He had over 1,600 rounds, which also is not cheap, right? That's $1,000.
Another $700-800 for that per case.
In ammo, in ammo, and other things. And as you said, the body armor and everything else. And I'm like, what is going on? I mean, how did I that was a question that I had. I don't know what the answer is, but how in the world did he get his hands on, like you said, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 worth of arms and equipment to be able to go out and do that? And it's kind of crazy. I know that, and in fact, I know that several of the families at Uvalde were trying to sue Daniel Defense, although they had no legal liability in this. They make a lawful legal product just because somebody did something wrong with it. But it does raise some questions. I mean, I don't know as anybody in the mainstream media, the legacy media, has actually asked those questions.
Well, I think now that they ask it, they've already picked their position. They've already taken a position along with the political narrative. They bought and sold. They sold their soul to the DNC and the globalists, and they're just going to do whatever they can do to facilitate taking down the Second Amendment and a few other things too. Once they get there, once the camel gets his nose under that tent, it's going over. But mainstream media, forget it. Those people are, like I say, they're totally unreliable as far as like any kind of truth and accuracy. It's not going to happen with them.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting discussion, and you're right. I mean, I have some questions about some, but I mean, look, we still have tons of questions on the Las Vegas shooter, right? Most of those questions have never been answered.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We've been denied the ability to read the manifestos of some of these people. Some of it's leaked out in some areas where we get to read a little bit of it, or we hear a little bit. Somebody hearsays, tells us what it says, paraphrases it. But they're hiding a lot of this stuff from the public. And look, if we're going to learn any lessons from these horrific events, we've got to understand the mindset. We've got to understand how these things came about, how they were, how they came to be, how were they paid for. We need to understand a lot of that stuff. And unfortunately, we're kind of being stonewalled by the law enforcement on this. And, again, the Las Vegas shooting took place, 7 years ago now? Why don't we have more answers to some of the questions that are on that? I think you're right. It's the same thing.
Well, like I say, you have to be able to connect the dots. I mean, I hope I'm wrong on this, and I really do. But there's too much. There's too many similarities, and the planets are lined up a little too perfectly to just be coincidence in this particular situation. And the parents, and as far as school shootings go, parents should be totally held responsible for this happening. They really should. And I'm a Second Amendment supporter, obviously. But you have to draw the line where responsibility ends and stupidity begins. If the kid has a problem and you don't know, do not facilitate putting a weapon in their hand.
Yeah,
unless you know your kid really that well.
No,
and even then, maybe they should not be in total possession of the weapon until they're at least 18 or 21 years old.
Well, I would agree with that. I mean,
Absolutely.
I agree with that the access is limited through you at that point. As a parent, you should be the limiting factor in those kind of things.
It's just so many things. I mean, when you look at the political situation that we're living in today, the government has really, I don't want to say torn the family apart, but it's made it so impossible for parents to be parents, between the schools trying to take over the control of the kids and raise the kids and leave the parents out of it, and all the other nonsense that the Biden administration and Harris along with them, don't forget that they've been promoting for the last 3.5, 4 years, and we're coming up on 4 years. I mean, it's just crazy, And then they wonder why the family's coming apart at the seams. They're responsible. The economic situation, the whole social degeneration,
right?
That they have been promoting. Really.
I agree that the splitting apart
they have a hand in it. They definitely have a hand.
Yeah, I agree that the splitting apart of the nuclear family is definitely part of the biggest problems that we have with the culture wars and the decline of society. Is that has a lot to do with it. We need to be reinforcing strong families. That's how that needs to work. And I agree with you 100% on that. All right, Fred, final thoughts before I let you go.
There's one thing we cannot let them do. We cannot let them take the Second Amendment because they're going to try. They are definitely going to try any way, shape, or form. They say they're not coming after the guns. Well, the whole sentence is, we're not coming after all your guns today. But what about tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. Thank you, Fred, for calling in. As always, it's good to talk with you, my friend. I hope you have a great weekend.
Okay, you take care now.
Thanks.
Talk to you again.
Thanks so much for coming on board. That brings us up to the next break. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit about that parenting. We're going to talk about what happened over there in Georgia, and why, if everything that's being reported now proves true, which it may change, but as it sits right now, I'm okay with them charging the father with 2 counts of murder in this case. Based on what's been going on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the details of it as we know them now. I'm sure more will come out. Will we ever know everything? Obviously not, right? We obviously will not know what's going on because we never get all the details, unfortunately. But we'd love to know them so that we can avoid them, right? That's where lessons learned come from. We're going to continue here, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, back to the chat room here. See what you guys have to say. All good questions, said Greg. All the questions that Fred raised. I agree. I think they're all valid questions. We need to know a little bit more. I mean, when I read that this kid had 2 AR-15s, Daniel defense rifles, which again, $2,500 to up to $4,000, and ammo and body armor and yada, 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 I started thinking, man, I mean, I don't have a Daniel's defense rifle. You know why? Because they're expensive. I mean, I'm just, but I'm curious. How was he able to afford that on a fast food worker's salary? How was he able to get that? Was there somebody else, maybe he's a good saver. Maybe, maybe he has been working hard and saved up all that money, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that. All right, let's see. Let me go back over here to the chat room again. More comments and questions. Brian says, but the parents shouldn't be told if their kids have a problem because the parents might not make state-approved choices. Yeah. Isn't that part of the problem today? I mean, this is, again, Fred was 100% right. The breaking apart of the family. We're seeing this in schools now. Oh, Johnny, what gender do you want to use? And we won't tell your parents. What name do you want to use? We won't tell we'll keep all this, whatever the information is. And I don't care if it's about gender or something else, I mean, whatever it is. But anytime somebody in authority at a school, place of education, a school, says to the student, you can do whatever, we won't tell your parents. That is so wrong. Because again, it now undermines the authority of the parents in all of those areas. I mean, it's really scary. And of course, again, going back to this, was it Ohio? I keep saying it was Ohio, the shooter whose parents were prosecuted and charged and convicted. Walking through what happened with that, there were so many levels of failure on that. The school failed as well, by the way, because they knew this kid. I mean, he actually got pulled into the principal's office the day of the shooting, had his backpack with him. Nobody bothered to say, hey, what's in the backpack? There was a gun in the backpack at that time. So many different levels of failure here. But yeah, Brian has got a point. The parents might not make the state-approved decision. The parents, you should be 100% responsible for the raising of your children. You should have those choices. But again, if something is done badly or wrong, you need to be held responsible for that. Yep. They keep information from the parents. Then when things go south, they charge the parents. Sandy, I don't know if you followed that case at all, but I have no sympathy for the parents that were charged and convicted in those cases. None whatsoever. Because they were not good people. They were not good parents. They're not good people. And they contributed greatly to that. So, oof. Tawny says the breaking down of the nuclear family has been longer than 3 years. It's more like 30 years. Yes, no, exactly. I'm sorry. Did I say 3 years? I meant 30. If that's the case, because that's exactly it. And that's a core component of what's going wrong in society today, in my opinion. My not so humble opinion. There's some other good comments here. Where was the other one? Personal responsibility and laws that enable that. Blindly backing the blue is how you get enforced mask mandates and people arrested for praying in public. Again, Fat Ray, 100%. You're not wrong, my friend. You are not wrong. And Greg follows my mantra, or Brian follows my mantra. Don't talk to the police. Just go watch that video, the Don't Talk to the Police video. That will open your eyes. That's a 45-minute ride that you will be like, whoa. Here we go.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a dick, but somewhat funny.
Well, at least I'm somewhat funny. At least I'm somewhat funny, but I am kind of a jerk. That is true. Sometimes I am kind of a jerk. That's what happened. All right, we've got more coming up here. This one final segment. The phone lines are open at 319-527-3864 if you want to call in. But before we get too far along, I do want to talk about this case in Georgia of the shooting this week. Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms is writing about this, talking about the father is now being charged alongside the son in this shooting at Appalachia High. Georgia officials charged the father of the suspected gunman with 2 counts of second-degree murder yesterday, the most severe ever filed against the parent of an alleged school shooter. The arrest came less than 36 hours after 2 students and a pair of teachers were gunned down with an AR rifle that investigators allege the man allowed his 14-year-old son to possess. Along with the murderer, the father, Colin Gray, was charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 8 counts of cruelty to children. His son, the alleged killer, has been charged with 4 felony counts of murder. The father, quote, knowingly allowed him to possess the weapon. His charges are directly connected to the actions of his son, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. There were warning signs before the attack on Wednesday, according to law enforcement. A year ago, investigators interviewed the man and his son about alleged online threats the teen had made to shoot up the school, accusations that the shooter denied at the time. This week, the boy's aunt told the Washington Post that the teen had been begging the adults around him for mental health support in recent months. Before Thursday's announcements, the teen's grandfather said he wanted the Colin Gray, the son's father, charged along with his son. He said if he didn't have a damn gun, he wouldn't have gone and killed anybody. Tom continues, the alleged killer's family on his mother's side seems to have been rather public about how the boy was severely troubled and been crying out for help. It seems those cries were literal rather than a euphemism for red flags. Regardless, those cries were not heeded, which puts at least some responsibility on the parents. We also have to remember that the FBI spoke to the family last year and that Gray had told them that he had some hunting rifles, but his son didn't have access to them. And it turns out that may have been true at the time, or maybe something changed, or he lied to the FBI. It seems, despite the visit from law enforcement, that Colin Gray then bought his son an AR-15 for Christmas last December. You've had the FBI come out, you've had the local law enforcement come out, they've asked you specifically about guns. He has threatened or been accused of, he denied it, but accused of threatening to shoot up the school. And you think it's a good idea to buy your kid an AR-15 at 14 years old. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't buy my son at 14 or 15 an AR-15, but it would be in the safe, right? He's not going to have immediate access to it. He has to go through me to get the access to it. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, this is, as we said, and Tom Knighton is the one that mentioned, he said, it's not unusual to charge people with a homicide someone else commits when their own actions contributed to that. For example, the getaway driver in an armed robbery can be charged with murder even though he stayed in the car behind the wheel. And so while I'm not a huge fan of charging people for things that other people do, in this case, they had responsibility for this son. And again, we're not talking about him getting into a fight or shoplifting or something else. We're talking about him, one, killing people, and two, killing people with something that you gave him, that you enabled him to do this with. So I am not... I guess if these facts all turn out to be true, and again, this is what's being reported now. Things may change in the future, but if it is the fact that he bought his son an AR-15 this December after being interviewed by the FBI, after being told that his son had threatened to shoot up a school, I have no problem with this. I have no problem with him being charged. There is a tremendous amount of culpability in something like that. I mean, that is to me, I wouldn't even hesitate to say, yeah, good. AR-15s do make a great. Chris in the chat room says, I bought my kids AR-15s for Christmas a few years ago. They make a great gift. Yes, I agree. I think they do make a great gift. But again, we like to have a little gun safety around here. And if I did not feel they were mature enough to handle it, they would go. I mean, they all go into the same gun safe anyway, right? But again, if my kid had been questioned by the FBI, if I had been interviewed by the FBI or local law enforcement and said your kid threatened to shoot up the school, wouldn't you think twice about that before you did that? Michigan. Thank you, Gary. It was Michigan, not Ohio. Parents should be culpable for enabling a killer, says Gary, just like the parents in Michigan. Parents are responsible for the actions of their minor children, period. I mean, when they enable, I agree. If a kid goes to school and he's misbehaving and he acts out, he gets in fights or he steals or he does something like that just by himself, I mean, I have questions about whether or not a parent could be culpable because we know that sometimes kids are out of control. But when you enable them by, in the case of the Michigan parents, buying the kid a handgun, or you enable them in the case of this thing in Georgia where apparently the father bought the kid an AR-15 for Christmas, there are issues here. And obviously the school knew about this, right? In the Michigan case, the schools actually called the parents and the student in on the day of the shooting. He had a backpack that had a gun in it. They never bothered to check the backpack. Because he had drawn a picture with a gun and they never bothered to search his locker. They never bothered to search him. And now, of course, this thing, I mean, they knew that this kid in Georgia had been brought in. He'd made threats. Were they not keeping an eye on him? I don't know how much culpability is there. But again, I don't have a problem with the parents in this case. If what is being said and reported is true, I don't have the problem with the parents being, charged in this case, or in this case, the father. I got time for one more call. Randy's on the line. Randy, what's on your mind?
Oh, I just posted a question in the chat room that I asked myself, in fact. And I'm talking back at myself, by the way, here, but I'll just try to
Go ahead
with it. But my question was, if a neighbor, teacher, or relative knows that a kid is a bit psycho and has made numerous threats to shoot up a school, like in the Parkland, Florida situation in 2018, and the parents and the local government's due process are not doing anything, should the neighbor sneak in and remove the psycho's guns and bury them for safekeeping, or should they be afraid of being caught and hope somebody else does it?
Well, Randy, I'm never going to advocate for you to go break the law. And if somebody else has decided that, the due process isn't doing anything, because you just don't know. I'm never going to advocate that you break into anybody's place and steal their guns. That's a good way to get shot. I mean, I'm going to say that first and foremost. Second of all, if the due processes aren't working, it may not be the due process is not working. It may be that the system, something is fundamentally broken. I mean, the Parkland shooter, again, multiple contacts with all these guys and everything else. I don't think necessarily it's not that due process, it's not working, is that the system that they have set up is not working. They're not working it. We saw the same thing in the Sutherland Springs shootings in Texas. The guy was dishonorably discharged. They never passed that information over the NICS system. It would have disallowed him from being able to buy a gun. I mean, there's a lot of questions here, but no, my answer to your question is no. Don't sneak into somebody's house because you think they might be psycho. First of all, you might want to get yourself checked if you're going to sneak into a psycho's house. But stealing's wrong, Randy. I hate to tell you that, but stealing is wrong, especially when it's your PFD. Thank you, Randy. Got to go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Yeah, no, I don't think you should break into anybody's house. I don't think that is a good idea. Jeannie says she has to chime in from her law enforcement backgrounds. Might as well spread the culpability of the school administrators. Again, I agree. There should be some questions here. If this kid was already under investigation, you probably should have been keeping an extra eye on him. I don't know what they did or what they didn't do, but that's a question that should be is going on. She says the kid was being bullied, ? The dad realized his kid was being fed to the wolves. I don't know. I haven't read enough of the backstory on this to know if the kid was being bullied or not, or if he was just having a mental health crisis. I just don't know. She says, were the administrators and law enforcement apathetic? Again, the FBI interviewed both of them back last year, middle of last year, end of the school year last year, apparently. And then local law enforcement interviewed them, and he reported at the time the kid denied talking about shooting up the school, which I don't know. I don't know how hard. I don't know what the post was. I don't know where it was posted, or et cetera, et cetera. The dad said that they only had a couple hunting guns and the kid didn't have access. I don't know. The system is broken. She goes on to say the system is broken. Yes, I agree. I mean, I agree. The system is broken right now. Chris says that Randy needs to send me his PFD every year to support the show. Well, it's okay. I mean, Randy's been a member of the Common Sense Corps. He's okay. We can argue with each other. But yeah, just like I wouldn't break into somebody's house to steal their guns, I wouldn't steal their PFD. So there you go. Can we ask Willie about the movie Forge, since we're talking about the need for strong families? I'll ask him about it. He's already got the movie set for today, I know, because he sent me the list of the movies he's going to talk about. But we'll see if we can find out. And that movie may not be one that he's watched yet. So we'll see if we can get him to get a watch of it. And we'll let you know, Tony. Oh, man, this whole thing. But I mean, again, I was really upset when the Michigan parents were indicted. And then I actually watched several hours of the court proceedings, which you can go back on Court TV and you can watch that. And I will tell you right now, I still blame the kid, but that kid needed help. They've got text exchanges going back and forth between the kid and the parents, and the kid is literally begging them. He was having hallucinations. He was full of anxiety. They were leaving him alone at the house all by himself for, days. He was texting them basically, not quite to mommy, I'm scared, but almost to, it was heartbreaking. And they were so into their own stuff, living their own lives. And the way they talked about the kid, between the text, between the two of them, and all this became public knowledge during this court case, was just shattering. Absolutely shattering. So even though I was opposed to the parents being charged to begin with, after I got more details and we watched what happened with this case and everything else, I support their conviction. Because these parents, they were horrific. And they contributed directly to this. That could have been nipped in, it could have been stopped. It could have been nipped in the bud. They had the opportunity. And not only that, then they enabled him by buying him that handgun. Can you hear my dog snoring? Anyway, it is spooky. Making a Monster season 2. Is he the subject of that? I'll have to go back and look at that, Jeannie. Spiritual neglect is rampant in U.S. families, in the government right now. I agree. Again, this breakdown of the family unit, this pursuit of these, narcissistic, feel good, it's all about me things, not caring about what the family is going through. Oh man, it's heartbreaking. Again, shattering, crying shame. Randy says it's true that most people will worry about themselves rather than take action to stop a possible school shooting. It might be better to wait for local government's due process, even if it takes years. Let somebody else sneak in and take away the psycho's guns. I know I'd be afraid to take such actions. Well, again, because you again may not have all the facts. Just like I was not a fan of them being charged, the two parents being charged, until I watched the whole thing, and then I was like, oh yeah, these people need to go. They got to go. All right. We're coming up on it. Phone lines are connected now. I'll change the lights here. We'll get things going on. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Okay, we're ready. Boy, short week and a good weekend. That's what we're looking for right now. Willie Waffle comes in every week to give us the weekend movie review, entertainment report, and more. Why? Because I said so. That's why. Because he obeys my command. Hello, my friend. What's happening?
What's happening is I'm all for this 4-day work week every week, man.
I know.
This is the best.
I know. I was just reading a story back in the day where they were like, at one point, I don't know if it was FDR or somebody, was ready to sign into law the 30-hour work week. And I'm like, okay. That'd be nice to, Anyway, yeah, I have friends that work like 410s, and I'm like, I would do that. I already work 510s, 12s, 410s would be 410s would be awesome, but anyway, it's all good. So here we are. The weekend entertainment and movie review. Where do you want to get started? Should we talk politics first, I guess?
Why not?
Yeah, let's get this one out of the way, because this is really, baby, this is not even about entertainment. This is not about art. This is about politics. We're talking about the Donald Trump movie, The Apprentice.
Yes, a very, very controversial movie. It's about Donald Trump and let's say how he learned all of his business acumen from a shady figure. And, and So what's been going on is, it's got this small little distributor, and there was a fight among the investors because one of the investors is a company called Kinematics, which was backed by former Washington Commanders football team owner Dan Snyder, who was very upset with the movie. He is a supporter of Donald Trump and feels that the film's content was a betrayal and not a true portrayal of President Trump. So his company was basically kind of saying, we're out of this. Like, we're not going to help
Right.
you distribute it.
Right.
Well, so another company has bought out their rights, basically paid off their investment, probably made them a little bit of money on the side there. And they are now going to try to release the movie on October 11th in the United States. There is a Kickstarter campaign because the distributor realizes they're going to need money to maybe rent theaters or convince theaters to carry the movie. So they're trying to get some capital, and they're going to a Kickstarter campaign for it. Now, the thing that interests me the most about this movie is Donald Trump is played by Sebastian Stan.
Okay. Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was not either, but Mr. Marvel has picked up some work here, and I'd be curious to see how he portrays Trump. I think that'd be interesting. But I'll say the same thing I said about the Reagan movie. How you feel about Trump is how people are going to judge the movie. If you hate Trump, you're going to love the movie.
Great. But it's really all, I mean, it's all politics, right? I mean, the timing, bringing it out a month before the election and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, the whole thing really just reeks of and by the way, they launched their Kickstarter and they hit their goal in the first day. So they were looking for $100,000. They got $139,000 with 25 days to go. So, I mean, it's gonna, whatever. I mean, at this point, I probably won't even bother to watch it in theaters if I ever watch it, because I really don't care that much about Donald Trump or the whole thing. I mean, to me, that's, but at the same time, it's just tired, man. It seems like this is just the attack from every level. It's it really makes me, I feel jaded. I feel really jaded about this.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm like you. I'm kind of this observer. And I look at everything that's been happening in this campaign, and I'm like, I couldn't even imagine these kind of things would happen in an election. The legal fights, the changing of a candidate after the primaries were over. I mean, just like what are we doing here? I mean, everything is about do whatever you can to win, and having any self-respect is out the window.
Right. Yeah, no, I just, at some point I'm just like, I don't think this is going to sway. Well, I mean, that's the thing. People who hate him will love it. People who love him will hate it. People in the middle probably won't go see it. I mean, really.
They won't care.
Yeah, it'll be.
They're going to go see Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to watch football games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch what the numbers say at the box office, but I just don't see this making it. But you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I just feel like it's so overtly political.
And I won't even believe the numbers at the box office. And here's why: because if I'm involved in this political fight, I find organizations that buy all the tickets and give them away to people.
That's true.
Now I have a bunch of sold out shows.
Yeah, now they can do it as a political donation, right? Political organizations could buy tickets and then send them out, and well, I guess we'll see. We'll see what it is, and you'll have to give us a report, I guess, after you watch it. But we'll see what happens. All right, what's next?
What's next? I'm very excited about this story. As we talked about last week, one of my favorite shows is Only Murders in the Building. And they made their fourth season premiere last week, which means there were 4 murders in the one building in New York City. Well, it was announced this week that there will be a 5th murder, my friends.
Man. Oh, man.
Only Murders in the Building has been signed up for a 5th season.
After you talked about it, Terry and I started watching it again because we'd watched the first 1 or 2 episodes, and I think it was because it was dribbling out, and I was just like, I ain't got time. I don't have patience for this. And so, but we went and we watched this last weekend, and the episodes are only 30 minutes long. We didn't realize that at first. I'm like, man, that goes really fast. And then I looked down and realized, well, it's because they're only 31 minutes long, and you got credits. So So we ended up watching all 10 episodes of the first season over the whole weekend, the long weekend. And I was like, oh man, that was so much fun. It was just a really fun now PG-13 language, folks, just so you know. It's they're not afraid of using language on that show, but it's funny, it's clever. It kept me guessing. It really did. It kept me guessing all the way around. And I love that. I love it when I can't tell you who did it within the first quarter of whatever's going on. And it's really, really good.
Yeah, and that first season for me is still the best season. Yeah, because it was surprising and it was new, and I thought they were very innovative. And you'll know the episode I'm talking about. There is a suspect who is deaf, and we essentially go through the entire episode kind of from his perspective,
right?
And without the sound.
Yeah,
it was so well done.
All the only thing in the entire episode is music, under music. There's not a spoken word in the whole episode. And it's just like, I mean, it was crazy. It was really, really crazy, this one character. And anyway, I really enjoyed it. I think it's good. We're looking forward to watching the next season this weekend, or part of the next season or whatever this weekend, which is pretty good because little 30-minute bite-sized chunks, it doesn't take long to eat it up. So, all right.
You're going to love it. As a matter of fact, season 3, I got to tell you, season 2 is good. Season 3 is better.
Okay. All right. Well, and good actors everywhere. I mean, it was, so many different great actors popping up in this thing. Sting was in this first season, and
Sting is the best part.
It's just so many good different things, like Nathan Lane, and I mean, it's just, anyway, great stuff. All right. What else we got?
Well, we also have, let's see here. How about Adele? Yes, Adele fans are beside themselves right now. Their champion, their queen, has announced via TikTok that once she's done with her run in Las Vegas in November, she will quote, the quote is, "I will not be seeing you for an incredibly long time."
I mean, does she need to?
Adele is walking away, baby.
I mean,
yeah, I know she's filthy rich as it is now.
Yeah.
How much more do you need?
Yeah.
But it's kind of a shock. I mean, she's still, I think, at the top of her game, top of her earnings. She's still doing great music, but she's getting married. She's engaged to the sports agent Rich Paul. People who are fans of the LA Lakers and LeBron James know Rich Paul and his involvement with the team and with LeBron. And the theory, some people are even speculating maybe she's pregnant.
Oh, well, maybe. I mean, good for her. Maybe she just wants to take that time off to plan her wedding, get married, and relax a little bit. I mean, I can't imagine a residency in Las Vegas is a sedate pace. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
So,
and I think, honestly, maybe she just wants some time away. Maybe she just wants to be a normal person. It's something you and I talk about. If you're already filthy rich, why not just walk away from it all and enjoy your money and enjoy the quiet and get away from the baloney of life?
Right.
You don't have to put up with it anymore.
And as an entertainer, she can go into solitude for, 5 or 6 years. And when she comes back, it'll be a big splash. Right. So it's
not
massive. Yeah. It's not like she's losing her ability to earn money. And I mean, hell, I would like to just stop and get away from it all right now. I just don't make filthy money like she does, so I got this thing called eating that needs to happen, so anyway, all right, well, good for her. I'm glad to hear it. Finally, SNL is coming coming to Peacock, right?
Yes. So, one of the hottest things that's in streaming right now are comedy specials. All the stand-up comics are getting paid tons of money to do hour-long specials on Netflix and everywhere else. Well, Peacock said we're going to get in that business too. And they have decided they're going to have their first live comedy special on Peacock next Thursday, September 12th at 9:00. And it will be hosted by Saturday Night Live stars Colin Jost and Michael Shea.
Okay. I don't know who either of those guys are. I haven't watched an episode of Saturday Night Live in 15 years, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be great.
They're the anchors of the weekend news segment now.
Okay.
And they will be introducing some of their quote unquote favorite comedians down in New York who will all do little bits and pieces and get some exposure.
Well, Peacock's trying to be relevant, and this might be a way for them to do it. So good luck to them on that. I'm glad they get a chance to do it. All right, we got about 4 minutes here, and we're coming up on the last. You've got 2 different things, one on Netflix, one in theaters. Take it away.
Let me quick hit the Netflix because I think we want to talk about Beetlejuice. So the Netflix series, the new series, Perfect Couple, starring Nicole Kidman and Liev Schreiber. And this is a murder mystery. And they are a very rich family. She's a famous author. He comes from generational wealth. And they're preparing for their son's wedding up in Nantucket when someone gets murdered. And now we're going to spend the next episodes trying to figure out who is the killer.
Okay.
And the thing with this is I feel like they don't know what they want this mini series to be. On the one hand, there's some very snarky comedic characters who are hilarious. And I thought maybe that's going to be the tone of the series, but not quite. Is it a serious, just downright murder mystery? Well, there's a lot to that. But then there's also, is it a satire of murder mysteries? There's a little bit of that. And I think that mixed tone really plays with you and always has you kind of trying to settle in. And when you settle into a series like this, you've got to have something consistent. So I'm at like 2 waffles. I just feel like, it was almost there. Like if they had just kind of made it one of those things, it would have been very good.
Did you watch it all the way through, or have you?
I have seen the first 3 episodes.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe you can tell us later if it comes back and gets any better. All right. Beetlejuice, Beetlegeist. What do we got here?
We have what's being billed as a sequel, although, man, it seems very familiar. So, yes, this is Beetlejuice, starring the man who now wants to be known as Michael Keaton Douglas. And as Beetlejuice, and everybody's back. Winona Ryder's back. Catherine O'Hara's back. Not Jeffrey Jones, because he has his problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
Alec
Baldwin, right? Not Alec Baldwin.
No. Alec Baldwin's not back. Gina Davis is not back. But it is a return, pretty much for Winona Ryder's character, and that she has traveled back to the hometown, back to their old haunted house, because her father has died, and her boyfriend has convinced her they need to get married, but there's a problem. See, young Jenna Ortega, who is her daughter in the movie,
okay,
she's fallen in love with a boy,
okay,
and there's going to be trouble. Now, I think that this is a fun movie, but I think a movie that it kind of jumps around a lot. It's going from gag to gag to gag. The story isn't as important. They're just trying to get to the little show-off scenes. They're trying to get to the effects. They're trying to get to the wild characters. Now, I'm still going 2.5 waffles. I think you got a good movie. But, man, you just felt like there was a wasted opportunity a little bit.
Well, again, to expand on it, not just retell the story, but to expand on it and do something a little different. And, of course, you got a lot of powerhouses there, so I agree that would have been a better all the way around. And of course, this is the one that was delayed by COVID and stuff getting stolen off the set.
They had the strike.
And the strike,
the strike and stuff got stolen off the set.
Stuff got stolen off the set. And I mean, they had so many problems there. But all right, well, 2.5 waffles. It's not bad. It's not bad. Maybe not as good as the original, but we'll figure it out. If you had the original, what would you give the original?
Groundbreaking.
What would you give
the original was 4. The original was 4 waffles because it was so groundbreaking. Yeah. It was so different. Yeah. This is more of the same.
Okay. All right. Willie, what do we got next week? Quickly here.
Next week we have Speak No Evil.
Oh, this looks good.
With McAvoy.
Yeah.
James McAvoy.
It looks nutty. I can't wait. All right, Willie Waffle, thank you, my friend. Folks, we're out of time. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you on Monday with Nick Begich. Yeah, I mean, Michael Keaton was, he's a great actor. He always has been a great actor.
Yes.
But Beetlejuice is like one of his standout roles. Like, if you're going to name the iconic Keaton role, Beetlejuice is probably it. I mean, he played Batman. He played, he's played Marvel characters. He's done, Mr. Mom. He's done a lot of different things. But if you're going to name one, I mean, that's the one he's probably going to be remembered for forever.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think the movie is, they're trying not to overdo it. You have to remember, in the original Beetlejuice, he was only on the screen for maybe 20, 25 minutes.
Right.
Because too much Beetlejuice is too much. And they follow that formula here. He's not in every scene. He's not, talking for 120 minutes, or in this case, it was an hour and 45 minutes. I mean, they try to weave in other stories. The problem is there's so many other stories going on here. There's a story about a demon that's chasing after Beetlejuice. There's a story about, Jenna Ortega falling in love with the local boy. There's the story of Winona Ryder trying to figure out what to do with her boyfriend. There's the story with Catherine O'Hara, whose husband, who used to be played by Jeffrey Jones, has died.
Right.
Boy, they killed him off fast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's too bad because it is a great. I think there's a great opportunity there, and it's unfortunate. It's the same. It's Tim. What's his face?
It's still Tim Burton. He directed it.
Yep.
And so and he's even spoken. I saw an interview with him the other day where he said it was really kind of inspirational to him and re-energizing to kind of go back to something like this.
Right.
Back to really the movie that made him.
Right.
The movie that made him famous. I mean, this is the one, guys. Like without Beetlejuice, you don't have a lot of the things that you have from Tim Burton and that style that he spawned.
Right.
So I think you've got to give him a lot of credit there. So, he's going back to the well a little bit. And, they're trying to bring back the characters they know you want to see. And they're trying to bring back situations that they know you want to see. And they want Beetlejuice to be all Beetlejuice. There's no character development for him. He's still the same.
Right.
And it's funny.
Right.
But I feel like, you're going to the well again. And I really I don't know what here was new. What here justified doing a sequel other than, well, we can get the whole gang back together and make a ton of money.
Yeah, well, maybe that's enough. I don't know.
I can't poo-poo it. I mean, if somebody offered me a ton of money, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, people won't like it. What do I care? The cash is the check's got cash.
Exactly.
Baby.
Did it ring the cash register? That's all I care about. Yeah. So all right, we'll see. Well, this Speak No Evil flick coming up next week. My wife made me watch the trailer this last weekend because she's like, have you heard of this? I'm like, no. She goes, has Willie talked about it? I said, no. And she said, we got to watch it. And we watched the trailer and I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
James McAvoy.
Yeah.
That kid is nuts. He hasn't been typecast yet because he's done a lot of different things. But, when he did The Beast for Shylomon, and he, with the multiple personalities, and now in this one, he's just menacing. That kid is just like, you get spooked. You just look at his eyes and you're like, oh, I can smell the crazy from here.
Oh, I think James McAvoy is one of those fantastic under the radar actors. Like, if I want a great actor, I'm looking at James McAvoy, Michael Shannon, Sam Rockwell, these guys who put in amazing performance after amazing performance after amazing performance, but they don't get to the Clooney level or the Brad Pitt level, but they are among the best that are in the business right now. And McAvoy proves that time after time after time. And I'm excited to see it because, like you said, he's a menacing, crazy character, and it is going to be one crazy terror ride.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. So you'll have to, Terry will be waiting on Tinderhooks, waiting for you to give you the waffle meter report on there. Although she doesn't trust you because you still, she brings it up every time. Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak, and he's like, it was 2 waffles, it was okay, and she's like, that thing is a masterpiece. So anyway, it's okay. All right, Willie. Well,
the ladies always have to find one thing wrong with me.
Yeah,
and that's what she found with me.
Just one? I just just one? She doesn't know you that well. All right, my friend. It's good to talk with you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, talk to you then.
Okay, folks. Nick Begich on Monday. And we'll see how things are going in the big congressional race. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you then. Have a good one.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.